I had no idea how it would all begin that evening at dinner. I was sitting across from Victor Covington at a fancy restaurant, not realizing that this night would forever alter my life. My husband of 18 years, Matthew, was sitting next to me, but it felt as though he wasn't there. I hadn't felt anything for him in a long time because of his business trips and the way he looked away at his brief responses. It had killed something inside of me. I knew he was cheating, but I couldn't prove it. Remember to watch this video through to the finish and hit like, because this is going to be a really interesting tale. You should also subscribe to my channel so that I can continue to share more amazing true stories like this one with you. Please hit the like button to show your support. Victor Covington was 68. But he still looked strong, full of energy, and powerful. He had broad shoulders, a magnetic personality, and every move he made commanded attention. That night he focused entirely on me. He never took his eyes off me. Filled my glass before I could ask and leaned in when he spoke. Matthew didn't even notice. His only focus was impressing Victor. At one point Matthew got up to go to the restroom the moment he left. Victor leaned in, his voice soft but serious. Matthew's job is in trouble. His sales are dropping. And he's losing focus, he said. He paused, locking eyes with me. Your husband isn't just taking from me, Elena. He's ruining his own future too. Then, without breaking eye contact, he opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder, placing it in front of me. I've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. If I go to the police, he'll go to prison. As I slipped the folder into my bag, I felt Victor's gaze on me intensely and unblinking. I wanted to look at what was inside, but I hesitated. Victor's unreadable but strangely captivating eyes piqued my curiosity, but I was also terrified of what I might discover. Then, with a smile and a slight lean, he said softly, "You look amazing tonight, Elena. Did you pick that dress just for me?" I was taken aback for a moment, unsure of how to react. Was he kidding me, or was he serious? Before I could figure it out, Matthew returned to the table, and Victor leaned back in his chair, sipping his wine as if nothing had happened. Victor turned to Matthew, and his tone was cool and firm. "You're flying to Miami tomorrow morning. You need to fix those sales." Matthew stiffened, swallowed hard, and nodded okay. When we got home, an odd feeling twisted inside me. When we got home, everything changed. Matthew put himself in bed as if nothing had happened and fell asleep immediately. Watching how easily he relaxed and made something inside of me twist with increasing discomfort. Victor's words kept playing in my head, and I felt the urge to open the folder that was still in my bag. But the truth was that Victor had something else planned before all of this. Before this story between Victor and Elena gets any more intense, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications. This story is about to get intense, and I'd love for you to follow it through to the end and leave a comment. It really helps in the middle of the night. I walked into the kitchen. I didn't turn the light on. Reaching into my bag, I pulled out the folder. My hands were shaking. I took a deep breath and opened it. A few papers fell out. And then I saw the photos of a hotel room in Miami. Matthew, a blonde woman, a bed, and a bottle of champagne. My throat went dry, and my stomach turned. That was it. Everything was clear now. Matthew had been lying to me, not just to me but to Victor too. But Victor already knew, and that night was just the beginning. But the beginning of what? The next morning, watching Matthew, I couldn't hold back the disgust building inside me. He stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his tie, carefully combing his hair, brushing invisible dust off his jacket. He was in a good mood. There was a spark of excitement in his eyes that I hadn't seen in a long time, but it wasn't because of me. A husband with a good job and a powerful boss, and all he could think about was flying to Miami to cheat on me. As I watched him get ready with so much enthusiasm, only one thought ran through my mind. I had witnessed what a true man looked like, and Victor's strength, presence, and stare made me wonder why he hadn't dismissed Matthew yet. After all, it was amazing that a guy like Victor could have fired someone like Matthew with a single snap of his fingers. Victor knew his own power. So when Matthew slammed the door behind him and left, I didn't even look after him. I was alone. But that night, loneliness didn't feel the same. Then the doorbell rang, and Victor Covington Elena appeared, standing beneath the porch light's gentle glow. He apologized for coming unexpectedly, and for a few seconds, I froze, feeling a strange warmth rise inside of me. I was wearing a thin satin nightgown, the fabric lightly clinging to my skin. The straps kept slipping off my shoulders. My hair was messy, and I felt comfortable in my own home, but now standing in front of I felt exposed. Victor was flawless from head to toe. His dark suit fit perfectly over his broad shoulders. He stood in the doorway, his large frame taking up most of the space. His silver hair, damp from the rain, gleamed under the dim light. His eyes were filled with a slow, measured fire as he looked at me over. He didn't say a word. But the way his gaze moved over me made it feel like it was touching my bare skin. At that moment I thought about Matthew standing in front of the mirror, admiring himself and buttoning his shirt with a smug look. Matthew happily whistling as he headed to Miami, and now the man in front of me was a real strong man, strong, commanding, and dangerously alluring. Victor didn't need to take a step closer. He already filled the entire space. And I realized I wouldn't be able to resist this pull. This was only the beginning. And it wasn't going to end here. I opened the door wider as he entered. And his scent filled the entire house. The cold, rainy night air behind him carried a deep, woodsy, intoxicating scent. But his presence alone made the room feel smaller and warmer. He put the folder on the table and the wine bottle on the kitchen counter before I could say anything. And his slow, deliberate voice made me swallow hard. "Did you look?" he asked, nodding slightly. "You weren't surprised, were you?" I looked away. "No." A brief silence settled between us, then Victor took slow, deliberate steps toward the living room, sat down in a chair and leaned back. He spread his legs slightly, still keeping his gaze on me. I felt like a guest in my own home. "Richard was already dead to me," Victor said, his eyes never leaving mine. I held my breath as he continued, pausing just slightly. "After seeing you, I wanted to talk to you. You're different, Elena. And I don't want to see you get hurt." Something inside me cracked. I had spent years dealing with men like Richard, men who lied, ignored me, and betrayed me. But no one had ever spoken to me like this. The way Victor looked at me, the way his words wrapped around me, it confused me. But this was different, a pull, a force. Something I couldn't ignore. A warmth spread through me. Being near, he made me feel both safe and in danger at the same time. I had no idea how far this would go, or that my life was about to change completely. Victor never took his eyes off me as he stood up. He reached for the bottle of wine on the counter, opened it, and poured 2 glasses. When he handed me one, I realized my hand was trembling slightly. But his touch was strong. As I looked into his eyes, something inside of me changed. That would never be the same again. Victor's gaze never left mine. He wasn't just looking at me. He was looking through me, as if he could see every thought going through my mind. "I'm doing this for you," he said, adding that Richard had already sealed his own fate. "But you deserve more." He then spoke again in a steady, low voice. "I see you're alone, Elena." I held my breath. "We'll talk about Richard later," he added, his voice almost a whisper. "But right now it's just you and me." As he spoke, his hand reached for the wine bottle again. The soft sound of the cork twisting free was the only noise in the room. He poured 2 glasses and handed one to me. My fingers shook slightly. And Victor noticed. But he didn't say anything. Instead, he gently took my hand, steadying his fingers barely brushed against my skin. He wasn't just watching, he was studying me. His presence filled the room. And I couldn't help but watch him too. His dark suit is slightly damp from the rain, fit perfectly over his broad shoulders. With every breath, his chest rose and fell in a steady rhythm, the lines of his neck, the silver strands in his hair catching the dim light, even the way his loosened tie rested against his shirt. It all gave him a dangerously effortless charm, no matter how much I tried to resist. I was being pulled toward him. "You know," he said, taking a sip of his wine, "I can't seem to stop looking at you, Elena." His comments caused me to pause, even though I was ready to take a sip myself. "What do you mean?" A feeling of warmth swept through me. I said, scarcely raising my voice above a whisper. And Victor gave me a little smile. "Are you sure you don't know?" We locked eyes for a moment. And I felt a strange calmness settle inside of me. It had been a long time since I had spoken to a man like this. And I thought of Richard, whose cold eyes and indifferent gaze had never lingered on me like this. Victor, however, wasn't just watching me. He wasn't trying to make me feel anything. He already felt it. And he was about to take what he wanted. I took a sip of the wine. It left me with a sweet, warm, and heavy feeling that made it impossible to take my eyes off him. The uneasiness inside me had vanished, replaced by a laden, floating sensation. And Victor put his hand on the table and leaned slightly toward me. "Elena," he said, "now I can't let Richard ruin your life." Victor went on, "You're too beautiful for that." My lips parted slightly and my breath caught. But I was unable to respond. Everything within me stopped. "Yet I have an offer for you," he said slowly. "I know it's fast, but some things you just feel right away. I won't take away Richard's job, but I will take away his authority." Victor's eyes swept over me before he said, "And you, Elena, I can take you away from here to Switzerland. We can go together." I'll demote him. Victor said he won't make the amount of money he used to. But he'll still live. A ringing filled my ears. Was this the reason he was here to take me on a storm of emotions? His eyes, his words, everything about Victor had upended my mind. But at the same time, one thought kept coming to mind: a real man. Strong, knowing what he wanted, and capable of touching me deeply. Words got stuck in my throat. But Victor was patient, not pushing me to leave. But not leaving either. He just watched me while I waited for my decision. I thought about Richard, his betrayal, his lack of interest, and the feelings I hadn't felt in years. Then I thought about Victor. His presence, the way he looked at me, and the way he made me feel. Suddenly, the chaos inside me vanished. I looked up into Victor's eyes and said, "Okay," and he smiled slightly. His eyes were full of satisfaction and victory. He was cautiously testing me. But when I answered, everything fell apart the moment his lips touched mine. I felt something inside me awaken that I had been forgetting for years. This wasn't an escape, it was realizing what it meant to be claimed by a real man. Our kiss was deep, intense, and irrevocable, and when Victor's hands settled on my waist, I felt a chill. Victor's eyes darkened as he took me in from head to toe. His gaze burned through me, and I saw pure admiration in his eyes. I didn't need to say anything, but I did, and my breath became uneven as my hands found the thin straps of my satin nightgown without hesitation. I slid them off my shoulders slowly and steadily, without trembling, allowing the fabric to slip down my body and pull at my feet. I said, "You're the strongest, most beautiful, and most ideal man I've ever seen." His inner strength was triggered. Victor moved in again, capturing my lips, and as he did, I felt something I hadn't in so long, something finally falling into place. Richard didn't matter anymore. Who he was or what he had done didn't matter tonight. It was just me and Victor. Without breaking eye contact, I slowly turned around. My legs were trembling. But with every step I could feel Victor getting closer. He didn't make a sound, but his breath was warm and steady when I stepped into the bedroom. I let myself fall onto the bed. The pillows cushioned my body and Victor's gaze never left me. Then without looking away, he slid off his jacket and loosened his tie, pulling it free before tossing it aside. As he slowly unbuttoned his shirt, I knew one thing for sure: he was in control. But I was ready to surrender, and when Victor leaned over me, I knew this night was going to change everything. Victor moved closer. I could feel him. His large frame and scent affecting me deeply. The effect of the wine made me pull him toward me and to speed things up. I could tell Victor liked it because his breathing quickened as I felt something huge building inside me. Victor took a deep breath and let out a soft sound so beautiful he whispered. We kept talking about how warm and passionate we both were. Victor's movements sped up from time to time and it was dizzying. I reached for his hair, slowly moved my hands down his shoulders and placed them on his waist. My legs trembled as if they had finally found where they belonged. I pressed my hands against his waist. "Elena," Victor said, "I'm G to take you away from here." I gasped, "Please, let's go." I practically begged, breathless. At some point the sounds I made grew louder. But I didn't care. Victor was out of breath. And I closed my eyes and allowed myself to experience everything. I couldn't even remember how many times I trembled, 2, 3, maybe 5, but that alone showed that I had made the correct choice. He turned toward me in bed, his eyes searching mine, his breathing still irregular, his skin warm, his strong, broad shoulders relaxed, but that sharp, unwavering look in his eyes remained. His face flushed red, and I could see his strong shoulders tense and his legs cramp. Then, he allowed himself to relax as I felt Victor's warmth inside me. "We can leave whenever you want. What's your decision?" he questioned in a quiet, curious voice. "Elena." Without hesitation, I replied, "I've made my decision." I squeezed Victor's hand tightly, not trying to hide my excitement. Victor tilted his head slightly, saying, "I'm going to my mother's. And I'm going to file for divorce tomorrow. Elena, a woman like you, deserves to live the life she deserves." With a deep sigh, I reached up and touched his face, my fingertips lightly grazing his skin. "Victor, I won't really be at my mother's." The look on Victor's face made me feel stronger than ever. There was surprise, admiration, and something deeply possessive in his expression. Victor raised an eyebrow, but his eyes held something else. Something soft, something real. I continued, "And I want a child." "Victor," my voice trembled, but there was no doubt in my words that we should have a child together. Victor remained silent for a few seconds before leaning in and kissing me. "If you've made it this far, I know this story has touched you deeply. There's so much more to share. And you won't want to miss any of it. He murmured, I'll do anything for you, Elena. To let me know what you think, please be sure to press the follow button, enable alerts, and leave a comment.